let's get into Division 5 because, again, we talk about the rematch. This is the only rematch of all the 6 championship games. Youngstown Ursuline knocked off Coldwater last year. And a tale of two cities, really. First of all, start with Coldwater and Chip Otten, who's their head coach. Remember, their coach passed away. Coach Reed passed away over the summer. Chip Otten took over. They got off to a 1-2 start, the Cavaliers, but they started to catch fire, and down the stretch, they have been very, very good. Going into the playoffs, this might be one of the hottest teams of everybody so far.
Well, and they're hot, and they certainly know how to win the playoffs. And, you know, they had an almost hiccup in week 2 of the playoffs. They beat Hamilton Bay in overtime, but since then they've been playing very strong with strong wins over West Jeff, and they beat the Freddies last week of Fredericktown. But, you know, typically this time of year you talk about a great running back with great stats, but Reese Kling, 96 catches, 1,600 yards, and 20 touchdowns through the air. The guy's getting it done, and they're a balanced football team, and I think they've got a shot.
Yeah, you mentioned Reese Clink, and there's going to be a question as to who's going to be getting him the ball. Ethan Bettinger, who was the starting quarterback at the beginning of the year, went down with an ankle injury, and the terrific sophomore, Austin Bruns, who's, you talk about being an athlete, he started last year as a freshman on the basketball team. He's now injured, and Bettinger's taken over, so we'll find out. But
should be a very, very good football game. 6th trip to the state championship for Coldwater. Meanwhile, 4th trip for the back-to-back champs in the Irish and Dan Reardon and company. Talk about this rematch in Keese Teague, 257 yards, 5 touchdowns last week. He did put the ball on the ground, which was unlike Keese Teague, but again, nobody has been able to figure out how to stop this juggernaut. Doesn't matter what division you're in. These guys play up. They'll play even. Really doesn't matter. They are a tough out.
Well, that's the bad news for Coldwater. Ursuline's played such a difficult schedule this year, and they've been strong all year long, and they're loaded with so much talent and speed. It's going to be a tough task for Coldwater. Certainly, when you have a chance to three-peat that sand a lot, there's no easy way to do that, but so far they've looked nearly invincible.
Yeah, the only time they looked human was at halftime of last week's game against Lima Central Catholic. They were only up by 2 points. But if you look at the stats, they had 281 yards total offense, 12 first downs, and 4 turnovers. 4 turnovers is a lot for a game. You do it in a half, and you're still up by 2 points. The matchup, you know, we talk about how big Ursuline is. Coldwater only has 2 players over 225 pounds. But that's a tough, scrappy team on both sides of the line.
Yeah, give Coach Porter and the Thunderbirds of Lima Central Catholic a lot of credit because there were a lot of nails that were chewed down in that football game last week as Tyler O'Connor, their great quarterback, gave them a run for their money, and they put up, you know, almost 90 points in that football game. Okay.